could be funnier than Arthur Lowe. I mean, he corpses me. It's superb. I've watched it over and over and over again. My cousin, Bill, of course, is in it, and he tells me all sorts of wonderful stories about Arthur. I could never have played it like that, but Mark, I probably wouldn't have had to. They let me play it in my own way. Sean Sutton, who was the head of programme, said, "You want to play Doctor Who?" And I said, "Yes, but how do I play it?" And he said, "As Jon Pertwee." And I said, "Who the hell's that? I've never been Jon Pertwee. Never. I've no idea who Jon Pertwee is. I've hidden under a green umbrella all my career like Peter Sellers. I've never been me. And up till that time I hadn't been. So he said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll find you." And so I got the job, and I did the very first one, and my God, was I embarrassed. When I look now at those scenes when I'm standing in front of a mirror trying on funny hats, and that awful, embarrassing scene in a shower with a shower hat, oh, terrible. But luckily my producers left, and Barry Letts, the actor, he came in and took over, and he really knew about actors, and he understood what I was trying to do, and I wanted to play a character for the first time in my life, straight down the middle, to play it for real, make it believable, even though I was all flamboyant and this folk hero figure, you know, with a frilly shirt. And that was an accident, because they wanted me to do something for the front page of the Radio Times, and I went to my wardrobe and I found a velvet smoking jacket, which was rather trendy at the time, and a Mr. Fish frilly shirt, and I found a pair of black trousers and some elastic-sided boots that I'd worn in pantomime, and a cape that my grandfather used to wear, an Inverness cape. And so I put this on. Ah! You may remember that photograph. Wah! And they looked at it, they said, "That's damn good." I said, "Well, yeah, but how the hell do we explain it away in the first programme?" He said, "Oh, we'll find a way." And we did. You remember, I came out of the hospital bed, and I went into the changing room where all the doctors were, and I nicked various articles of clothing, a cape from an eccentric old man, and a hat, which we abandoned, and Tom Baker picked up with afterwards, thank God. And everything else was pinched from this locker room. And then I went out and I pinched the old man's car, and that was the beginning of Bessie, you know, driving the old Edwardian roadster. So when I said to the brigadier, "Can I keep these clothes in the car?" He said, "No, you can't. You've got to give them back, but we'll get you some others like it." And so for all the years I was in Doctor Who, I wore these flamboyant, lovely clothes. The cape sort of represented the wings of the mother hen, you know, with the chicks underneath. And it was rather symbolic, I thought. Barry Letts sent for me when he hadn't been very long, and he said, "Look, I've got to have a chat to you." He said, "I don't think you're taking this thing very seriously." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you're always laughing about. I mean, you're always laughing. You're all in hysterics. You and Katie Manning are in hysteria all the time. And John Levine, you can't get a word out of him. He's always laughing. What's going on?" He said, "We've got a job to do." And I said, "Barry, have we ever been late?" He said, "No." I said, "Have we ever dried up badly or held you up?" He said, "No." And I said, "Have we sort of held up production in any way?" He said, "No." And I said, "Then what the hell are you worrying about?" I said, "What I'm doing is I'm making people have fun. And if people have fun, you get work done. Look at you doing a factory floor or something and everybody's enjoying themselves, you get much more work done." And that's what made it good with us. Nick Courtney in Inferno wore a black patch and a scar, and he had his back turned to us. And I said, "I tell you what we'll do." And Caroline John and myself and John Levine, I said, "We'll all put scars on our faces and we'll all have black patches. And when he's got his back to us, and we'll go in and we'll say," he's going to turn around and he said, "Now look here, Doctor, I've told you before." I said, "You'll take one look at us and corpse him." See, so we did this and we all put the black patches on, and we would, I said, "Come on, put yourself together, John," because John Levine was in hysterics before he started. And they came through the door, and I went, which was the cue for Nick to turn round. And Nick turned round, he looked at me and he said, "Now look here, Doctor, I've told you before, and I won't tell you again." He paid no attention whatsoever. So all of us fell on the floor laughing, and the director got furious and chucked us all out and said, "Stop buggering about, for Christ's sake. Let's get on with it and do it properly. You can't throw Nick. A wonderful guy, superb. I work with him all the time. Whenever I do any shows I can, I use Nick." And so the whole team was great. Roger and John and Richard Franklin, Katie, Liz Sladen, all of us get on tremendously well. All the doctors, well, not all, most of the doctors. Patrick Troughton, he and I were in the Navy together. He was very eccentric. He was in MTBs, and when he used to go out in action and it was cold, he wore a tea cosy on his head. I've got a wonderful photograph of Pat going out to sea on the bridge with a tea cosy on his head. He said, it's oh so bloody cold. He said, I can't, a tin hat, ridiculous thing. He said, tea cosy. When we were working together, we were doing a thing called the Three Doctors with Bill Hartnell, and poor Bill was very sick. He couldn't appear really with us. We shot him all on a screen, on a visual screen. Pat and I worked together, and Pat was under the TARDIS console, and he's supposed to say something like, I put the chine screw in the Rotsit, see? And I'm supposed to say, but that's not where it should be. And he said, oh God, I've dropped it. And I said, stop, cut, hold on. Sorry, what was that, Pat? He said, what? And I said, what was that you said? He said, well, malign. I said, it wasn't. You said, oh God, I've dropped it. You're supposed to say something completely different. He said, oh, Christ, that's near enough. And I said, no, it is not. I said, I'm the doctor now, not you. I said, you say the cue and be done with it, because I can't, I need cues. Oh, God, blimey, he said, wonderful man. And then when that was over, I was asked to do a film. I was asked to do a big, big picture by Keith Waterhouse and Willis Hall. They said, would you like to make a movie of Wurzel Gummidge? And of course, I'd read it as a book, as a child, Barbara Eufen Todd's books in the 30s. And it had been played on radio with Norman Shelley and been enormously successful. And I loved the books. And I said, oh, God, yes, I'd love to. They remembered the character, the postman. They remembered this West Country character that I played. So they said, would you like to play it? Now, unfortunately, we couldn't get it off the ground. It was very sad. No money, we couldn't get the distribution. And so they abandoned it. And I said, please don't do that. Write me a pilot. They wrote me a very short pilot. So I gave it eventually to Lewis Rudd, who was a very perspicacious man from Southern Television. And he said, oh, I think this is wonderful. It's magic. And we did it, and it took us 18 months to get it on the air. It was certainly the greatest fun thing that I've ever been involved with. I loved it. Because you ran the gamut of emotions from A to Z in 25 minutes. And if you got stuck, you changed your head. Which was an idea I had, because with the TARDIS, you see, you can go forward and back in time. And I thought, well, that's what we can do with Wurzel. He takes his head off and puts another head on. So you can be anything. You can be a singing head, or a writing head, or a thinking head, or any kind of daft head. And so it worked. And within weeks, well, you all know what happened to it. It became one of the top-rated shows in the country. We had 12.5 million viewers a week, and we were on at 5:30 in the afternoon. We knocked Doctor Who into a cocked hat, which was funny, because I'm knocking myself into a cocked hat, because my repeats were showing at the time. But we had enormous success with it, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, because I'll tell you for why, because when I was doing Doctor Who, say, yeah, I were number 3. And when I was doing Wurzel Gummidge, I was number 1. There weren't nobody, apart from radio, but nobody on Telewelly did it. So I done it there for Telewelly, and I had somebody nice to do it with old Eunice Stubbs. She's proper, she is. She's lovely. She's a right bitch in the show, but she's lovely. And Geoffrey Bell done with him what plays the Crow Man. He were lovely too. And one day we were doing a scene together, Geoffrey and I said, Mr. Crowman, sir, I've done the most terrible thing. I said, I've torn one of my Aunt Sally's legs off, and there's only one thing for it, and that's to put me on the compost heap. He said, Wurzel, I think you're right. I can't think. And the tears were coming down, and I stopped in the shower and said, what the bloody hell are you crying for? I said, I'm supposed to be doing the crying here, not you. He said, I can't help it, it's so moving. So we had a lot of people in tears with that. It was lovely. A gorgeous show to do. I remember Beryl Reid playing my mother, who was supposed to chase me with a pitchfork. And she was chasing me along with this pitchfork, and she was going about that much every 5 minutes. And I said, oh, Beryl, for God's sake, come on, give us a chase or a prod or something. I'm going to run away from something. And she didn't. And the director said, come on, Beryl, move your stumps. I mean, you know, chase him. He's got to be frightened of you. And she said, darling, I was booked for the acting, not the bloody running. The Carry On films. Peter Rogers, the director and the producer, they both said to me, do you want to be in the Carry Ons? I said, no. I said, because I'm very busy in the film business. I'm making a lot of films, British quota pictures, granted, not international movies. But I said, because all your marvellous actors you've got, like Kenneth Connor, Kenneth Williams, Sid James,
are terrific actors. I mean, really great actors. And what are they doing now? Nothing but carry-ons. Their career is finished. They just do carry-ons. That's all they can do. And this is what Kenneth Williams' whole career was ruined by that. Oh, I mean, he did a lot of other things as well, but as an actor, it was. So I didn't want this to happen to me. But eventually Peter rang me and said, look, yeah, I'd like you to do this because I think you could stand up to Kenneth Williams. He said he's causing us a lot of trouble at the minute. I said, well, what's he doing? He said, well, he's gone so far now is that when visitors come onto the set, he turns round and moons them. I'm sure that some ladies who don't know what mooning is, somebody would explain it to them. And he used to actually drop his trousers and moon to the people that came in on the floor. And they said, Kenneth, please, what are you doing? And he said, oh, what? And he did his moon. And so they said, perhaps you could stop him. And I said, oh, thanks very much. Nobody can stop Kenneth, and they never could. I mean, he used to do dreadful things to Charlie Hawtrey. Charlie Hawtrey used to have a plastic bag. In it were 5 woodbines, the Times crossword and a pencil, and a sarnie and an apple. And every single day, Kenneth Williams stole it and hid it. Every day. And Charlie would say, where's my plastic bag? And everybody would go, ah, you got this in the set. Oh, every day it went on, all this hoo-ha. So I did 4. For the first one I did, I looked like a very old Yorkshire Terrier with hair all over here playing the soothsayer in Carry On Cleo. I did Carry On Cowboy. The script was quite funny, and I said, can I make him blind? He said, yeah. He said, yes, go on, yeah. Can I make him deaf? He said, yeah, go on. So I made him everything. So when you see him, the cowboy, you know, he couldn't see, he couldn't hear, and he walked into walls and got on his horse backwards and made a bit of fun out of it. Then I played a very strange character, didn't I? I turned a thumb into a monster. I don't know what that one was. What was it? Carry On Screaming, I think. Anyway, they were fun, but they were just cameos, and I enjoyed it. I had fun in all of them, except the last one, and dear God, that was the worst films ever made. Carry On Columbus. Now, there's a funny joke about that. My wife said that Susie, your agent, she'd rung up, and she said, there's a marvellous job for John, is in Columbus. Now, I knew that Gerard Depardieu was playing this big Columbus film, and I thought, wonderful. I'm going to be in a Depardieu film, marvellous. They said, the script's coming tomorrow. And I waited for the postman to come, and the script came through the door, and I rushed, and I opened it, and it was Carry On Columbus. I'd never been more disappointed in my life. And when I got down there the very first day, I walked into the makeup room, and there was one of our most eminent actresses, Maureen Lipman, and I said, hello, Maureen, dear, and she said, hello, darling. I said, what are you doing here? And she said, same as you, dear, trying to earn a buck. I said, but not in Carry On Columbus. And she said, yes. I said, you in Carry On Columbus? She said, you wait till you see the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's going to marry you. That was T.P. McKenna, one of our top dramatic actors. He only had one line, they cut that out. Well, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed. I've had a most wonderful time. I don't know about you, but I've had a lovely time, and thanks for your attention and for your humour. Thank you very much indeed.